It's nobody's favorite time of the week again. It's Ask a Rabbi Wednesday. And this is a question that people have asked me over the years a few times. And how should we view the Balfour Declaration? I'm asking this particularly today because I got quite a few emails. I'm pretty surprised. I didn't remember signing up for any of these email lists, but I get a lot of emails, I guess, from more Zionist-sided websites and things. That today, at least on the secular calendar, is the 99th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration. And for those who don't know what the Balfour Declaration is, that's when the British Empire said that they were going to recognize Palestine as the homeland for the Jews and try to help Jews settle there. Now, there's one particular statement, and later it was accepted by the League of Nations and so forth. There's one particular reaction to this, rabbinical reaction to this, that people have asked me about, and has been sadly, and whether, I don't know, intentionally twisted or misinterpreted or accidentally so, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt, I guess total ignorance that it was accidental, but the Rabbi Simcha of Devinsk, Mayor Simcha of Devinsk, the author of the Meshech Chochmah and Or Sameach. I went to a yeshiva called Or Sameach almost 20 years ago. Not quite 20 years, 17 years ago. So the Or Sameach, after the Balfour Declaration, he wrote the following in a letter. He said that, and I think it was a public kol koreh, it says, Eimas Hashvuos Ovar, that the fear of the oaths has passed. What does that mean? Now, to put this into context, the Gemara in a few places, notably in the end of Ksubas, it also appears in Shabbos, Brachas, has a rather interesting medrash. It appears in Midrashim as well. Midrashic interpretation of certain passage in Shir Shirim. Shir Shirim is the Song of Solomon, the Song of Songs, literally. Sometimes referred to as the Book of Canticles, if you want to be fancy. And the Song of Solomon is a love song. That's the simple pshat. And of course, Chazal understand it properly that it's referring to love between God and His people, and that it's an allegory. And it's quite obvious that it's an allegory because certain things that are said there just don't make sense unless they're understood as an allegory. And that's why Rabbi Akiva, very famously in Mishnah and Yadayim, said that Shir Shirim is Kodesh Kedoshim. And the commentators explain, what does it mean, Kodesh Kedoshim, Holy of Holies? That the holiness of the Song of Songs is that every other book of the Bible can be understood on all four levels that we understand, these four basic levels, each of which have many other levels, that we understand Pshat, which is the simple, plain meaning of Scripture, Remez, things that are hinted to in Scripture, Drush is Midrashic, homiletical interpretations of Scripture, and Sod is the secret, Kabbalistic, mystical interpretations of Scripture. And every book of the Bible could be understood in all ways. However, Song of Songs is the one book which cannot be understood in the level of Pshat. It cannot be understood in the simple translation of the words. And so, therefore, the holiness, whereas all the books are holy, Rabbi Akiva says, but Shir Shirim, Song of Songs, is the Holy of Holies because it can only be interpreted, the simple meanings have no bearing on us as religious believing Jews who believe in Chazal. There is nothing for us to gain by interpreting this book as a love song between two human beings, which is what it would seem if you read it at face value. And therefore, Art Scroll, for one, refuses to translate it literally, as opposed to just about almost every other Bible translation that I've seen, which translates it literally. Art Scroll does not translate it literally, because that's not how it's supposed to be interpreted. Now, 3 times, and actually there's a 4th time, there's a similar statement. Do we have a statement in Song of Songs, I'm making you swear, O daughters of Jerusalem? And one of the times it says, by the deer and the antelope of the field, that you should not awaken or arouse the love until it is desired. The Ramban explains that Ad Shetechpotz Chayfetz means an object, that our love of God cannot be relegated simply to feelings. We have to put them into objects. We have to do mitzvahs, do actions that are in the physical world to, just incidentally, that's not the point what I'm bringing out here, that to bring out these ideas of our love of God, or else that love will be fleeting. Quite often they'll hear a sermon that inspires them very much, or hear some religious music or something that inspires them very much, and yet they will they'll just it'll disappear unless you put into action, meaning you accept upon yourself some religious devotion, some mitzvah that maybe you weren't doing before, you weren't doing with the same intensity before, and that's what we how Nachmanides understands this. Now let's just go on from there. The Gemara, the Talmud says, and nobody disagrees with this, when there's something in the Talmud that is not disagreed upon, then it's binding. And this is a big discussion about this particular passage. So the Talmud says that when it says, do not arouse the love until I desire, means, and it says it 3 times or maybe even 4 times, it means that God made us swear 3 oaths, or perhaps 4, made the world swear, whether it's particularly the Jews, the whole world, or whatever it is, not to arouse the love until God desires, meaning not to force the end times to come. Most religions have some form of eschatology, and Judaism is no different. Judaism has its eschatology. Eschatology means the study of the end times and the ideology and the legends of what's going to be and the predictions of what's going to be in the end times. And so there are certain things that are supposed to be in the end times. And this passage in the Talmud is telling us, wait until it happens. Don't try to do it on your own. That's one of the big problems we have in the world, is people trying to push the end times, in their various traditions. We think about Shia Muslims who have put a strong emphasis on their eschatology, particularly the idea of the Mahdi. And it's often understood that the Shiites their push, particularly Iran, that their push to do certain things is to make their eschatology come true. Too, in Judaism, we have this problem, and so the rabbis warn us against this, and they say that this is in the Bible, in the Song of Solomon. Don't awaken the love until God desires. You can't put these things into your own hands. You gotta wait for God, and that includes taking over the Holy Land. We're not allowed to do. We're not allowed to rebel against the nations. We're not allowed to push the end times in any other way. Not even pray too much for the end times. Not to pray too much for the Messiah to come. Different things like this. Just wait patiently for the Messiah to come. And many rabbis, although not all agree, but the vast majority of serious rabbis who are authoritative, at least at the time when it happened, saw the Zionist movement as a violation of these oaths. There were and even many who were supportive of the Zionist movement were afraid of the oaths. Others said this is just folklore, which there is place sometimes to say that, and it shouldn't be interpreted as a halachic requirement. The only problem with that is the next part of what it says. Is that the Talmud says if you do this, then it's good. And if not, why does it say I make you swear by the deer and the antelope of the field? And the answer is that I'm going to let free your flesh like deer and antelope to the hunters. Rashi says it's lashon hefker. That's a term of just ownerless, meaning that it will cause and incite anti-Semitism to the point where Jewish life will be worthless. And we saw that took place in the Holocaust. The Satmar Rebbe particularly points out that a believing Jew, and then any time something goes wrong, our first obligation is to turn to the Torah and see, is there anything like this anywhere in our tradition? And by the Torah I mean both written in the oral Torah. He proves this with a story with King David, that there was a famine, and for 3 years King David, he looked in the Bible, he found verses in the Psalms or in the Proverbs, and he said, maybe this is why there's a famine, maybe that's why there's a famine. And then finally he went to the Urim and Tumim after 3 years of famine. And the question is, why didn't he go right away to the Urim and Tumim? Why did he wait so long? And the answer is, Torah lo b'shamayim the Torah is already given to us. We don't need to go to any oracles, to any prophecy. We have everything we need in our Bible and in our traditions of how we are taught the Bible. And so therefore he said, no worries. And he said if David would have found what was said, so then that would have been the answer. But he didn't find it. So Satmar Rebbe says we don't see anywhere else this lashon hefker. So let's see. Since the Talmud tells us, based on the Bible, that if these oaths are broken, something like a Holocaust would happen, and nothing like a Holocaust ever happened before. This was the first time in history we had something so extreme, although we had similar things, but this goes beyond anything. And he said, let's see, were these oaths broken? And he proves that's the rest of the Maimer Shel Shavuos, beginning of the first of the 3 discourses in the Veil Moshe. That's basically what the Satmar Rebbe explains. Now, so anyway, a lot of people say, well, that the Meshech Chochmah was trying to say when he said that the fear of the oaths is past, it means that the oaths don't apply anymore because the nations gave us permission now, and so therefore we're not rebelling against the nations. There's a problem with that because there are midrashim which seem to be historical, which show that even and the Maharal, my holy ancestor, the Maharal from Prague, explains this, that there's really no permission, even if the nations force you to violate the oaths, we're not allowed to do it until the Messiah comes. So I'm sure that the Meshech Chochmah knew this Maharal, and the Meshech Chochmah made it clear that he felt that Zionism was a violation of the oaths. That was his opinion. So what And so what are we doing here? What does it mean that the fear of the oaths is past? And so even Rabbi J.J. Schechter from YU, clearly a Zionist, modern Orthodox, with all due respect to him, a fine person, he says he admits himself, and he wrote this in Tradition magazine, that it's very clear that the Meshech Chochmah was not saying the way that many people interpret it, that now the oaths don't apply anymore. What he was saying was that the Balfour Declaration, since Palestine, since Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land, remained under British rule, under the Balfour Declaration, it did not become an independent state. So therefore, the Balfour Declaration in and of itself was not a violation of the oaths, and so there's nothing to fear from the Balfour Declaration. That's the way that the Meshech Chochmah understands this, and no one should, you might follow a different rabbi, that's fine. Judaism is not monolithic. You can follow your own rabbis, but don't twist the words of rabbis to say things that they didn't mean. And it's unfortunate, because I know rabbis who I have respect for who have written this. And of course, nobody's perfect, and I can still have respect for someone, but this, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but it's very clear that the Meshech Chochmah, you want to follow a different rabbi, you want to follow Rav Kook, whoever, that's your business. Although Rav Kook also said many things that were not so pro-Zionist, and he often contradicted himself, so it's hard to say, exactly what he said on one way or the other, or what his opinion actually was. Of course, he often contradicted himself, and he admitted to the Ger Rebbe that he regretted saying many of the things that he said. But that's beside the point. So you should really try to find out what Rav Kook actually believed as well before you say you're following Rav Kook, But in any event, that's the issue here. Now, this has to do with current events as well. I was very, very shocked and dismayed that some friends of mine, actually, rabbis who I know, modern Orthodox rabbis from the more liberal side of modern Orthodoxy, but I have a lot of respect for a lot of the things that their movement represents, until they get into politics. Then they sometimes cross a line. But a lot of their ideas in Judaism I actually agree with, personally, except for most of their views on Zionism. And even their views on Zionism are tempered and not extreme, which is a positive thing. They are tempered, they are more centrist, not right-wing extremists. Although I love the right-wing extremists also. I love everybody, even if I disagree with them. When I see right-wing extremists, I'm meaning in Zionism particularly. I tend to agree with most right-wingers in America, especially those who are more on the libertarian side, which is part of why I disagree with the Israeli religious Zionist right, and tend to identify more with the anti-Zionist right, because I think that's an embracing of libertarian values, really. In any event, a group of rabbis a few months ago came out against Donald Trump. And not only that, but they were in the modern Orthodox community. There was one of the leaders of the modern Orthodox community, Rabbi Chaskel Luckstein. He is the rabbi of the synagogue where Donald Trump's daughter, who is Jewish, where she attends, where she's a member, and he helped her in her conversion to Judaism. He did not perform the conversion. He brought her to another rabbi who he knew would be more respected for various internal political reasons, even though he himself does perform conversions as well. But in any event, he was slated to speak at the Republican convention, and he was pressured not to. And I'm not quite sure why. I mean, this is pretty upsetting because on two levels. Doesn't matter. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm not the biggest fan of Donald Trump. I definitely think he's better than Hillary Clinton, although I sometimes suspect that he's just throwing this whole thing for Hillary Clinton. I certainly think Hillary Clinton wanted him to be her opponent. Whether he colluded with her, that I don't know. But it's clear that if there were anybody else running, this would be a landslide victory for the Republicans. And the fact that it's so close is very scary. And it almost makes me think of like the producers, where like they felt like they could make more money with a play that Mel Brooks had the producers with a play that failed than it wound up being a hit, and they were like in bigger trouble. And here it's almost like that now with Donald Trump. It's like you can almost suspect that he was trying to fail, and yet somehow he might win. And I only hope, not so much I hope that Donald Trump wins, but I hope that Hillary Clinton loses. And so most likely bearing some miracle, I don't know, I don't see how else it could be. In any event, although it's possible, anything's possible right now, especially right now, and we can hope and pray and whatever, and if Hillary wins, also God is still in control, so don't lose faith. But either way, things could be very bad coming up, or they could be very good. We don't know. It's all in God's hands. So anyway, the foolishness of these rabbis to come out and speak against Donald Trump. I mean, a lot of people are upset at the Satmar community for supporting, not monolithically, by the way, but many in the Satmar community supported Governor Cuomo in his re-election. And I, myself, am also upset at it, particularly because how many things he did, the redefinition of marriage, things like this. Yet, the fact of the matter is, there was a very clear reason why they had no choice but to support Cuomo. The fact of the matter is, if every Jew in New York State voted Republican in the last governor race, Cuomo would have still won. No question. The margin by which he won was more than the total number of Jewish voters, even though Jews tend to vote more than other groups, and so they are a powerful force in politics, particularly in local politics. But on the state level, they didn't have that type of effect. Now, when these communities live in enclaves that are large and visible, they lose their secret ballot, basically. I mean, because it's very clear that a community like Kiryas Joel, New Square, which is a different group, Square Hasidim, that these groups, particularly when they vote as a block, which they don't always do, it's pretty clear who voted for who, and it's not because that so much that they want this candidate or not. the issue is, it's quite different. This person's going to win anyway. So we can't afford to antagonize them. Not even so much to get what they want, but so much as they are in danger of being persecuted if they support the wrong candidate. So even though it's clear that the Republican candidate was more within their values, if they would have stood against Cuomo, they could have gotten damage. Now, smaller communities have more freedom. Bloomingburg, for example, their black vote actually was for Ascarino against Cuomo, particularly because Cuomo was fighting against the Hasidim in Bloomingburg, even though anyway, that's the reason why they're stuck, for lack of a better term. Many people were opposed from the beginning within the Hasidic community against creating an enclave like Kiryas Joel, particularly for that reason, because it opens us up to difficult issues like this. Thankfully, I live in a small community. Even if I did live in a place like Kiryas Joel, I would, on a state level, always vote Republican no matter what, unless the Republican was absolutely horrendous. Usually I vote on the conservative line anyway, but I'm a registered Republican. But that's the reason why, and that's very wise, because they're living in the real world. And my friends from the Bronx, it's very clear that they're not living in the real world. That they could come out, or in Manhattan and these places, that Jews are going to come out against Trump, rabbis are going to come out against Trump. I don't understand it. It's such a stupid thing to do on two different levels. If he wins, you've antagonized him and you've made yourself a target. And if he loses, then the people who wanted him to win are going to blame the Jews for him losing. And this is the problem with Zionism in general, that they don't understand that they're causing anti-Semitism. And this is the wisdom of the Satmar community, that they are trying, and it's difficult, and it's a tightrope walk, but they're trying their best to be good neighbors. That's why. But the thing is, I think personally, in places like Kiryas Joel, and that the people who are really fighting are mostly Zionists, because Herzl wrote in his journal that he felt that the job of Zionists was to increase anti-Semitism. This way, Jews will feel compelled to move to their Zionist country, and really the ultimate goal of Zionism is to take them away from Judaism. I mean, thank God, many, the religious Jews have widely defeated them, but they're still trying. They're trying to get them into their army, which is not because they need these yeshiva boys, these 90-pound weaklings, or these cholent fressers on the other side. This is who they need in their army. This is they don't need these people in their army. That's the last people they need in their army. The point is to get them out of the yeshivas and make them, if not secular, but at least to be supportive of their goals, even to water down their Judaism to a certain extent. And that's why there's this pushback by the ultra-Orthodox Jews against the draft in Israel and so forth. Now, and that was also the status quo always, and it's the same thing in any country that has a draft that seminary students and clergy are exempt from the draft. So anyway, it's been like that forever. I mean, and exempt from taxes also. I mean, this goes back to biblical times. In Egypt, the Levites were exempted from taxation, and other times in history as well. So, with this in mind, we have to understand, things are, thank God, pretty good for Jews right now. They're, Jews, for the most part, are not hated in the mainstream. And the only main source of anti-Semitism today is Zionism. And if the Jews would just give up on this thing, which is an insult to God, which is against God's word, we would have a lot less anti-Semitism. And I believe that the opposition to ultra-Orthodox and anti-Zionist Jews, particularly in upstate New York, is not anti-Semitic, but rather coming from Jews for the most part. I wouldn't be surprised if the Mossad or something was actually paying for these groups like United Monroe and the Rural Community Coalition and things like this, because the Gentiles who live in these communities, for the most part, are very happy with the Hasidic communities. It's mostly the secular Jews who have, whether it's a Zionist approach or a progressivist approach, that they want to be in control of everything. And really, if you study like Agenda 21 and things like that, a lot of these are connected as well. I definitely don't think, however, that there's any anti-Semitism, and a lot of people who are well-meaning might be fooled by the propaganda that these groups are saying, and that has led to anti-Semitism, but it's not in its basis, with these issues. And I do think that we could live in peace, and I do think that the either way we could work it out, but but the contradictory nature really of these what's going on in upstate New York, how it's actually catch-22. Every which way the ultra-Orthodox communities are pushed in the opposite direction, meaning, in Muncie, East Ramapo, there's concern they don't want to pay high school taxes, particularly for schools that they don't use, and so they voted in their people who will take things responsibly and not waste money. And people have said, oh, the Jews took over our school board and they don't even send their kids to school. Yeah, but they're paying taxes for it. Curious Joel, they don't have that problem. They have their own school district. And so the Monroe Woodbury doesn't get the taxes from Curious Joel, but they don't have to worry about Curious Joel voting in their elections and voting in their people. And yet, they're still upset. There's no answer. Either you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So what's the answer? Same thing. They're upset when the Hasidim move into their neighborhoods. I got cursed at just for shopping in Pearl River, for shopping in ShopRite twice. just for going to ShopRite to buy some grape juice for my patients in the hospital. And yet they don't want the Jews to stay in their neighborhoods and build higher within their own neighborhoods by annexing the land where Hasidim live, and this way they can change their zoning so they don't wind up moving into other neighborhoods. And we're not talking about they're invading some other neighborhood. They're in the neighborhoods where they've already settled. There's no one else there, and they want to build more. This way they don't wind up moving into other neighborhoods. They want to stay good neighbors. Remember, like Robert Frost said, good fences make good neighbors, and so by making a village, that wasn't the original intent, and now perhaps making a town and making the school district and so forth. The whole purpose of this is to be better neighbors and to not wind up invading other people's areas. It's, and then here, people complain, oh, the block vote. So then Kiryas Joel said, all right, we want to make a separate town, so there's no more block vote. There was a United Monroe. They had everything they wanted handed to them on a silver platter, and they said, no, you can't have that land. But then United Monroe will be in control of the rest of Monroe, and you don't have to worry about this. And no. In Bloomingburg, it's very clear that all of the opposition is Jewish. I don't think there are any Gentiles in the village of Bloomingburg who are actively opposed, particularly not any good Christians who are actively opposed to what's going on in Bloomingburg. It's only secular Jews who have an agenda, part of which is the liberal progressive agenda of control, power, and they know that they don't have power over these people, and they want these people to stop being religious. That's really their ultimate goal. They say, they have these big families, they're scared that the face of the Jewish community is going to change because the secular don't have kids and the religious do, and so pretty soon the majority of Jews will be Orthodox in a couple of generations, for sure, in 40 years. So what's the answer? For us, we don't care. We just want to live and let live. The groups like Satmar, they're not sending out missionaries like Chabad does, trying to get everybody to join them. They're not trying to get anybody to join them. They just want to live and let live. Very simple. They welcome people who are sincere and really want to join them, but they're not actively recruiting. So they might want to share sometimes. I know people who do, who are involved with it, but even those people are scared. I know one family, they from Kiryas Joel, they travel all around America to bring a little bit of Hasidic joy to other Jewish communities around America, but they're scared of people in Monroe and suspect, because they're going to try to find some excuse something to be upset about or whatever, when they're just trying to be good friends. In any event, so that's the situation that we have in with the Balfour Declaration, with the 3 oaths, and also with the current election. Even if you disagree, even you don't like Trump, but do it so respectfully. The way that don't go and I don't know, the way the statements that came out from the open Orthodox rabbis who I know against Trump, it's such a foolish move. It shows that they're not in tune with reality, because, like I said, if he wins, then you're making yourself a target. Although I know he's not going to target. But whatever. Why antagonize? And if he loses, then you're really going to make yourself a target, because they're going to blame you. And so, and I myself, most likely I'm going to vote for Trump, just against Hillary. I voted for Cruz in the primary, and my heart wishes I had the courage of Glenn Beck to vote third party, but I'm just too scared of Hillary. Not that it really matters in New York, although it might now, especially with what's going on now. So maybe I could vote third. I don't know. I won't really know until Tuesday, and that's why I don't believe in our early voting, even though we don't really have early voting like they do in other states in New York. But I like to take my time to think, to find out everything. I mean, we have, absentee ballots, whatever. But in any event, don't antagonize, for sure not. I mean, my main issues with Trump is I really think he's really for Hillary, because it's just so weird. He's a totally different person than he used to be, and it seems almost like he's a caricature. But he's gotten better recently over the past few months. He has improved. So anyway, excuse me. It's very complicated. So I'm almost at work now. I hope you were able to hear. Someone gave me this. My friend Marty Stevens, shout out. I know he watches the videos. I don't know if he made it to the end of this one. This is 42 minutes long already. He gave me this microphone, and I appreciate it. Hopefully, people hear the video over the voices. Well, God bless. And thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you all, God willing, another time. All right, and for God willing, next week for another Ask the Rabbi, and maybe another time as well. Before then, we'll see. All right, thank you very much. God bless.